The South African Council of Churches has sent its condolences to the families of the 341 people who've lost their lives during the devastating KwaZulu-Natal floods. In a statement today, the council has said that it is praying for the safety of everyone in that province.
The council is calling on members of the Christian faith to set aside a moment on Good Friday to do the same. The unprecedented flooding has washed away bridges and sections of roads in and around eThekwini, leaving thousands displaced and many people unaccounted for. Government has declared KZN a disaster area. This should free up funds for crucial recovery operations.
Psychosocial support and social relief of distress, including food, vouchers and blankets, is being offered through the Department of Social Development to bereaved and affected families. Municipalities will announce on burial assistance to the bereaved families who need support. The provincial executive has already announced a provincial day of prayer for the whole of KwaZulu-Natal.
Meanwhile, several organizations and charities have created outreach programs to assist those most affected by the floods. The Gift of the Givers says hot meals, blankets, bottled water, warm clothes, sanitary pads and diapers are the initial requirements for those in low-lying areas who have lost their possessions. Non-profit organization Meals on Wheels is providing cooked meals to all the camps where the displaced residents are sheltered after the floods, especially the coastal belt that includes eThekwini municipality, Ilembe district and parts of the Umgungundlovu and Ugu districts. At the same time, the South African Weather Service has warned of continuing high wind and rain, bringing the risk of more flooding in KwaZulu-Natal and some other provinces over the Easter weekend. Meteorologists say the flooding has taken them by surprise. Some parts of KwaZulu-Natal recorded almost their average annual rainfall in 48 hours. The service says although it is impossible to attribute an individual event to the climate crisis, it is certain that globally all forms of severe and extreme weather are becoming more frequent and more extreme than in the recent past. In other words, heavy rain events such as the current incident can be expected to recur in the future and with increasing frequency. Officials in KwaZulu-Natal have meanwhile warned that the death toll may still increase as search and rescue operations continue.
Let me speak further about this to Bishop Nathi Zondi. He is the Executive Committee Secretary of the KwaZulu-Natal Council of Churches, the KZN. He joins us now. Very good evening to you, Bishop, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Condolences to the community of KwaZulu-Natal at large. I was actually thinking, obviously from a Christian perspective, it is at this time, as the Church has rightly said, that, all of us are called to give to our neighbors, to, carry the load, the burden with our neighbors. What are you advising people who can't be in church to do? How can they lend a helping hand?
Well, thank you very much, Stepi. So I must also take advantage of your platform, if you allow me to pass our condolences as well to all the families that have lost their loved ones and those that have been displaced, to also offer our support as KwaZulu-Natal Christian Council. You know that KwaZulu-Natal Christian Council is the provincial chapter of the South African Council of Churches. Your question, to come directly to your question, Tsepiso, it is at this time where we have to show our humanness and show our love for one another, as the scripture teaches that we should love our neighbors as we love ourselves. We do so through many ways. And in this instance, we encourage people firstly to practically show support to their immediate people who are in their immediate environment. For example, what we have been doing as the Council of Churches is to drive a strategy with the 4 pillars. The first pillar is mobilizing all our member churches, wherever they are in their locality, to look for people that are displaced and people that may be in their community halls and wherever they are, and see what their needs are. Because in some instances, what we have found, Tsepiso, is that a lot of people are without food. So providing a meal to somebody that is in need, also setting up a prayer and counseling session for some, because remember, there is a lot of trauma and a lot of bereavement. And so psychosocial support, as the Premier said earlier, is also one of the very important services that we can offer to people. But maybe also, Tsepiso, I would also ask people, wherever we are, there are a lot of people that are still missing. Let's all join hands. Let's all do whatever we can to make sure that those that are missing are found. If we do that together, I'm quite sure that we will achieve a lot more. But
and obviously, Bishop,
also,
without having been in the same circumstances myself, but I'd imagine those who are either trapped or still fighting for their lives, who are still alive, are leaning on prayer to survive these moments. You spoke about togetherness, but I want to focus on how the religious divide can be overcome, especially at this time, because we know Easter is not celebrated by all religious denominations, but the church is also facing its challenges at this time. We'll talk about the United Methodist Church in Clermont. I believe that was also reduced to a pile of rubble. So how can the religious divide be broken? How do all the churches come together to help, irrespective of the area, race, creed, etc.?
Something interesting, Tsepiso, has happened in KwaZulu-Natal. That we've had to face in 2019 there were floods, and then there was COVID-19 in 2020, and then there were uprisings last year in July, and now these are floods. What has happened, Tsepiso, is that these, painful as they are, have taught us the need for working together. In fact, for example, if you look at 2020 and last year, we have together as different denominations, different churches, come together to form a broad front to respond together. I would say at this time, what you believe and what I believe and the differences that we have, important as they may be, but they don't matter that much. What is important now is common love and common brotherhood. If we do that, we are able to, sort of work beyond the divides, the denominational divides, even sometimes the religious divide. So we encourage communities, wherever religious communities are, to look beyond what divides them and look what they can do together to alleviate the pain that is currently creeping and ravaging our communities, but also to respond to the cry of communities as they go through the different stresses of life as we are currently. I would say that's the first part, Tsepiso.
All right, Bishop Zondi, another thing that people would want to be doing at this point, as the churches have been saying, it's 2 years now that congregants have not been able to go to church because of COVID-19, and the government, while doing away with the Disaster Management Act, has kept certain health protocols in place which apply to the churches, who can only accommodate 50% of your congregants. This is a sore point, I believe, for you, and also being called upon to police who can and cannot come to church. At this time in KwaZulu-Natal, it must be even more difficult. Not only am I thinking of you being able to house people who have lost their homes, their families, their livelihoods, you'd want to use the church for that. Is this presenting a difficulty for you? How are you talking to government about, if possibly, relaxing some of these rules?
You know what, Tsepiso? For 2 years now, as a religious community, especially the Christian community, we have been asking for government to allow us to meet in our facilities 50% capacity, and finally that was granted to us. But what becomes a problem is when we are expected, for example, to produce the vaccination certificate for people who come to our gatherings, especially where the numbers are beyond 1,000, to produce their vaccination certificate. That presents a difficulty. Why? Because think about this episode in KZN. As a church, if somebody has just lost a loved one and somebody has just survived an almost drowning experience, has just lost his house, and now he has to come to church where he finds solace, encouragement, and spiritual support. Now the pastor stands there or the church stands there and say, produce the vaccination certificate. If you don't have it, therefore you can go home, you're not allowed. I think that's a practical example of how unworkable the government decision is and how impractical is for the Christian community. Because the church by its very nature is an all-encompassing and an all-welcoming environment. You come here as you are. You come with your pain. You come with your struggles. You come, of course, with the issues of life that you are trying to navigate. And you come to the congregation of brothers and sisters who will give you words of comfort, words of encouragement, and a prayer, offer a prayer with you. And in that way, what the government is proposing of saying people have to produce a vaccination certificate, that's where it becomes very difficult for the church to apply and church to implement. In fact, as we speak, the South African Council of Churches, I know, the IFCC, which is the International Federation of Christian Churches, and many other religious bodies are currently engaging government to say, this is not workable. It's actually impractical. It does not work for the church environment. In fact, most religious bodies will have a problem implementing that.
So
and
how
in
will
fact,
you
we are
plan for
asking
this
government
weekend?
to consider that.
So how will you plan for this weekend period? And particularly, as you say, if you're called upon to help in the, relief aid that is being provided, whether it's to be a station for a soup kitchen, to be able to house people who don't have shelter, what are the conversations that you're looking to have with the provincial government?
We are having conversations with two groupings of people. The first one we are partnering with as a Christian Council. We're partnering with organizations that are engaged in the relief work. For example, we're working with the Red Cross South Africa, Domino Foundation, Zoe Life, and City Hope to help us, provide relief at a broader scale throughout the province. But on the other hand, we're also working with the government structures. We're working with the provincial government as well as the local municipalities in terms of ensuring that those that are housed in community halls and those who are, for example, still in their homes but going through different stresses because of what has happened are able to get help as soon as they need it. In some instances, as you would know, they are not accessible because the road infrastructure has collapsed. Because of that, it becomes very difficult for the church to work alone in providing a service to those communities. So we work better in partnering with a partnership that we have with government, provincial and local.
Bishop
That's what we are currently doing.
Thank you so much for your time, and all the best to you and the church as a body in the help that you can extend to all of those who are in need. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Bishop Nathi Zondi, the executive secretary of the KwaZulu-Natal Council of Churches, KZN, and of course, our heart goes out to all of those who are in KwaZulu-Natal who've either lost their loved ones, their homes, their businesses, and who are even trying to search for those, but also who just don't know where their next meal will come from. And hopefully everybody will come together.